Welcome back to the Leaf Tail Lounge, everyone. Today we have Adam Trimmings, a zookeeper and private keeper of an array of amazing species. Today we're going to be touching on multiple species of Europlates that he's kept and he's worked with in the past. And he also has many other amazing species, which we're going to touch on at some point throughout the podcast. So, Adam, if you want to introduce yourself, mate, and what you keep and kind of how you got to where you are now and just a little bit
Sure.
about yourself.
Hi guys. Yeah, so my name's Adam. Been keeping privately. It's going to be hitting nearly 20 years, which makes me sound very old. And yeah, along the way, I've had a lot of successes and a lot of failures, and like with anything, that's how you learn. That's how you adapt as a keeper and as a breeder. So I guess what got me into keeping reptiles as a kid, and I think a lot of private keepers will sort of relate to this, is I was obsessed with dinosaurs when I was growing up. So when Jurassic Park came out, I think I was about 9, and that just got me hooked. I mean, technically, I should like chickens and birds, but um, you know, but yeah, for some reason, it just made me look at lizards, modern day lizards as little dinosaurs. And I think, going to the zoo, I'd always want to go into the reptile house and, look at the crocodiles, the snakes, the lizards. And basically, I begged my parents to get a lizard for years and years. And they just, at the time didn't want me to have one, which is probably not a bad thing. I wouldn't say they're a good choice for a child. In some respects, I mean, some kids, I think nowadays there's a lot more information out there and sort of support with keeping exotics, but certainly when I was younger, it wasn't a common thing at all. Everyone had a hamster or a guinea pig, and I was there going, I think I wanted a green iguana, not knowing how big they got, and yeah, and so hassled my parents, and they just wouldn't budge. So, and then went to uni, studied animal management sciences, got my degree in quite a broad animal-related subject, but I did tailor a lot of my third-year assignments and things to exotics, so that was quite good. I was able to do that, yeah. And then I actually went travelling and did a bit of work overseas. So I actually spent 4 months in South Africa working at a reptile park out there, which was
Awesome.
fantastic. Yeah, it's really cool. A place called Kamai Reptile Park, and
Okay.
it's called a little place called Hoodspruit, and it's actually one of the hottest regions of South Africa for reptile biodiversity. And what I learned there was just insane.
Can only imagine.
We were doing like daily sort of snake shows. There was basically a lot of outdoor enclosures, and they had this big pit style enclosure with puff adders, and there was a couple of trees with boomslang. And we used to get, the animals would live in there. That was their enclosure, and I'd go in and have school groups and basically just do a lot of education and talking and showing people these amazing animals. And we also provided a service by where we would go to people's homes and retrieve unwanted reptiles that were in their, sort of homes and gardens and things. And out there, unfortunately, reptiles like snakes are really badly treated, and people just don't like them because of what they've been told, and it's sort of passed down generations. And yeah, so a lot of people try and kill them, and it was our job to kind of go out and educate and hopefully stop people having that mindset. And that's why we provided that service. We go out for free and basically rescue snakes from people before they ended up trying to kill them. And actually, that's why a lot of people in South Africa are bitten by venomous snakes like mambas and stuff. It's because normally they're trying to kill them, and we kind of had to say, look, don't put yourself in that danger because you'll lose, basically. So it was really good. It was really it was quite a unique experience. And at the time, I kind of really grabbed it with both hands. And looking back, I was only 23, and when I look back at what I did and sort of the species I worked with in the wild, and yeah, it's crazy. It's absolutely amazing. So anyway, got back after that, after my gap year, and then got into the zoo world. So I work with reptiles and amphibians as my career, but like I said, I've been keeping privately as well. So I've managed to build quite a nice collection up to date, really.
Fantastic. So going on to the next topic quite well. What is it you currently keep? I mean, I've been to your place and it's phenomenal in a
Oh, thank you.
sentence. But
Thanks.
it's, I mean, to touch on a few things you keep. I mean, depending on how much you want to share. I mean, what is it you
Yeah,
work with on a day to
yeah,
day
no,
in your
no
private
problem.
collection?
Yeah, so I'll start off with saying, I keep some species that are montane, so they're
Yeah.
species that don't like, hot conditions, like, tropical, lowland tropicals. So I keep Boyd's forest dragons, which you can see behind me. I have three pairs of Boyds, and I'll get one out to show you. They're currently in my dining room because it stays quite cool all year
Yeah.
round. So they work really well down here, and it's good because in winter I don't give them any supplementary heat. I just let them go to room temperature. So on a
It's ideal.
cold night, yeah, exactly, it's
Yeah.
perfect. And on a cold night down here, it can get to like 13 degrees. And a
Perfect.
lot of people would think, oh, that's way too cold. But actually, this is what these animals require for breeding.
Yeah.
I've actually got a female behind me laying eggs as well. Um, the breeding's just kicked in. Now we're sort of, the daylights are getting a bit longer and stuff. So, and
Nice.
that's what I'm leading on to say. With cycling my animals, I just let what's happening outside do it for me effectively.
Hmm.
I do reduce the light timers that I have on my enclosures over winter,
Okay.
but actually, a lot of the photo period is what's going on outside behind me. So obviously, I've got a big window in your
Yeah.
reptile room. You've probably got a window, and actually, that will be giving an ambient light into your room, and your animals will be picking up on that. So in summer, obviously, we have a lot longer daylight. So your room will stay a lot lighter,
Hmm.
brighter, longer of the day, and then likewise in winter, it will get darker a lot quicker and reduce that photo period. So
Yeah. Yeah.
this room basically just works perfect, and I've been keeping my animals here since I moved into the house, which was 5 years ago now, and it's really gotten them into a really good cycle, and
Good. Yeah.
they're very good at breeding in this environment. I've also got Anolis fraseri down here as well. They're a species found in cloud forest of Ecuador in a place called Mindo.
Okay.
Again, like the Boyds, they need very similar conditions, not hot. They like the cold night drops,
Yeah.
and they cycle as well. Just like the Boys do. So in winter, their reproductive behaviour changes and slows down a bit. That gives them a break from, especially the females, from producing lots of eggs, because they do, and it just gives them that little break. And then come spring, that's when it will kick start again, and they'll start breeding again. So I'll start finding eggs. So that's downstairs. And then upstairs, I've got two rooms. So I've got a tropical room
Yep.
where I've got Phylum Medusa bicolor. So I've got giant waxy monkey frogs. I've got a group of 4 males, 4 females. They're all captive breds. They're just coming into kind of adult size now.
Hmm.
I've had them near enough 2.5, 3 years. So they were small when I got them. So I've been growing them on, and hopefully, the dream is to breed that species. They're not commonly bred
Yeah.
in the UK actually at all. There's some guys in the States that have done it. But yeah, they're not a commonly bred species. Now, the dream with them and the goal for them is to put them in a greenhouse in summer and
Oh,
time
awesome.
it with a storm. So when we get a storm, when we get low pressure, if I stick them out in a greenhouse, I'll put irrigation on it. Hopefully, I'll be able to just mimic a monsoon storm, and I think that should hopefully trigger them to breed. But they're very tricky, so it's going to be. I think it's going to be a lot of trial and error with them, and just patience. But hopefully, I'll crack it, because one female can produce like 2,000 eggs, which is
That's
crazy.
crazy.
It's crazy. I mean, I wouldn't be able to obviously rear them all, but yeah, it would be a real big achievement for me. And also in the tropical room, I keep green tree pythons, in particular the locality Aru. They're just my favourite locality. They're
Likewise.
really,
Yeah.
yeah, they're stunning. I mean, don't get me wrong, all green trees are pretty. But when you look into the different localities, some do have different traits, different personalities,
Hmm.
And I just like Arus. They're generally quite docile, although my male's an idiot. He hates he is feisty for an Aru, but generally speaking, they're quite chilled out. And my female actually laid me a clutch of eggs this year. So I've got, she gave me 12 eggs. I've sadly lost a few, so I've got 7 still going, and they're looking really good. So I've bred green trees in the past, and what's interesting about them, females, like a lot of pythons, will actually maternally incubate the eggs. Now, it's not something that is commonly done in captivity, just because there's a lot of variables that can go wrong. And, you know, when you allow her to do it, you're kind of at the mercy of her knowing what she's doing. And if for whatever reason you're not giving her the conditions she needs, obviously the eggs can fail and she'll abandon them. So a lot of green tree python breeders, you know, sort of opt for the artificial incubation, which is actually what I'm currently doing as well. Just because you've got more control and you've got more, you've got a better, control. Sorry,
You've got a higher success rate of hatching.
Yeah, well, technically, you should do. You should have a higher success rate. But I did let one female I had maternally incubate about 5 years ago now it was.
I was just about to bring this up.
It was an incredible experience. Yeah. And what I would say, how I did it, and I won't go into the full story because it's quite long-winded, but basically I wanted her to maternally incubate in the enclosure, in the nest box, and for whatever reason, well, I know the reason, the temperatures weren't right in the enclosure. So she was sat on the eggs for the first 3 or 4 days doing what she should do, which is where they coil round them and they create like a beehive.
Yep.
And then one morning I came in and she'd abandoned them and she was basking. And the reason for that was the heat source I was using wasn't actually creating the best ambient air temperature.
Got you.
It was more localised. So she had to leave the eggs to heat her body up to then take the heat back to the eggs. And obviously in the wild, I think they would do that on occasion when they need to. They'll come out and bask for short periods and then go back. But it has its problems and its risks. So I was really racking my brains like, well, I can't have her keep abandoning the eggs. They're just going to fail. And I had to think quick on what to do because at this time, the eggs were obviously in the nest box, sat at about 24 degrees. Okay. When really they want to be in the 29, 30. That's the kind of range they need.
Yeah.
So I've got George Maxwell's Complete Chondro book, which every, green tree python breeder should have. And I quickly scrolled through to the incubation section. And he explained in the past he had converted a incubator into a brooder and put a female directly into the incubator on the eggs. And I thought, well, what an amazing idea. Like that just didn't occur to me. And at the time I had a glass fronted beer fridge, which obviously, is a great way to make an incubator by putting in a heat mat or reptile radiator, whatever you choose. So I had to make the decision if she went back to the eggs, do I take the nest box out with her on them and put it inside this incubator for the 50 days it's going to take to hatch the eggs? And I had nothing to lose because at this point it was sink or swim. I really had to just go, if she abandons them in the incubator, then that's it. I have to obviously call it for her welfare and pull her and then just accept the eggs are probably never going to hatch.
Yeah.
So she returned back to the eggs, and when she returned, I carefully lifted the box out. The incubator was sat at, I think I'd set it to 28 degrees.
Okay.
And I put her in there. And what was great, with it being glass fronted, there was a big hole in the front of the box I had as the incubator. I could literally look through the glass door of the incubator and I could see her on the eggs. Excuse me. And the behaviour I saw, George, was phenomenal. I mean, I saw her twitching her coils to generate heat. They almost shiver. And that generates friction between her scales and the eggs, and that can generate heat. So that's one way they heat the eggs. I saw her aerating the eggs, so when they open their coils out and they let air circulate through the clutch to prevent mould and, to let moisture disperse from the eggs, because the eggs are basically, they're producing moisture all the time.
Yeah. So
she controls temperature, she controls humidity. It's just, to see it in action was just an absolute dream and something actually I never thought I would achieve. Amazing. And then the day, I think it was on day 54, I shone the torch in, one night through the window, and I could see a yellow coil through her. and it was just incredible. And she ended up hatching 10 out of the 14 eggs.
Wow.
Yeah, little neonates, and they were bigger, they were stronger than when I previously artificially incubated. So they took a little longer, but they were definitely.
There's nothing wrong with that in my book.
No, totally agree.
Yeah.
And they were amazing. They got feeding pretty quickly as well, which was really good. Baby green trees can be really hard to get going sometimes. Yeah, it can be very painful. It can be very frustrating. But I was quite lucky that I think I got most of them feeding straight away. A couple needed assisting, but the majority of them were going straight away. So yeah, so to have done both systems of breeding green trees has been like really eye opening, and I will go back to maternal incubation at some point. But yeah, I just this time round I needed to just pull the eggs, do it artificially, and
Keep your blood pressure a bit lower.
yeah, definitely, because it's people don't realise. I had restless nights. I would wake up at night, honestly, and then I'd go and check the incubator and stuff. And you become so invested because there's so much at stake. It's not just the monetary value of the clutch, because let's face it, the money helps when you end up breeding stuff like this, because ultimately it's going to pay for new housing or it's going to pay for a new project, but first and foremost for me, it's making sure that I hatch healthy babies and that I can just get rewarded with healthy animals. So yeah, I think we're probably on day like 20. So,
Okay, so nearly half.
Another month to go, and
Yeah.
hopefully I'll have some little yellow shoelaces to show you.
Fantastic. So summarizing, you've got the Boyds, the Fraser Eye, waxy monkey frogs,
Yeah,
GTPs,
yeah.
and what else
Also,
in a nutshell?
Also, caiman lizards. I've got 3 juvenile caiman lizards upstairs I'm growing on. They're a
Amazing.
species I've loved for a long time.
Dream species for a lot of people.
Yeah, I've worked with them in my career, but I've never worked with them privately. So when I had the opportunity to get some captive bred babies, well, farmed babies. I'm not going to lie and say they're captive bred. They're farmed in large numbers in Peru, and there was an import, and I really wanted to make sure that I managed to get hold of 3 little ones. And
Yeah,
I like getting animals young where I can, because I like to be able to grow something on to my husbandry and sort of my thought process. When you get older animals, you can look at them and get an idea that they've been looked after properly and they've been reared properly, but sometimes you just don't know, and it's tricky because you might think you've got a really good bomb-proof animal that'll breed next year, but actually you don't know. For all you know, they've been getting fed really poor diet, and internally they've not got the bone density, if it's a female, for laying viable eggs. And so for me, I do like getting them young and growing them on. I find that really rewarding.
I mean, you took the words out of my mouth. I mean, that's something I'm experiencing myself now. It's regarding a female Shinisaurus, which we've spoken about, who gave birth to 8 babies. A couple of them were deformed, and they've all got small deformities of underbites. Taken her to a vet because she's got a small kink in her back. We did an X-ray, a blood test, and just an all-round check over. And bone density's low. So I've bought her as an adult. Obviously, I've had no control of their diet or calcium or supplementation, and bone density's low for what it should be. So you look at, apparently according to like Leachianus breeders, underbite is quite a common thing for low calcium animals. So if bone density is low, kind of makes sense. So
Absolutely.
it's one of them, like you said, it's a slow game because everyone in this game is quite impatient, and I am impatient. So I'm not going to lie and not say I'm not, because I am. But you get these animals smaller, you know exactly what's going in them.
Absolutely. And, as long as you've got projects because ultimately, we all want to breed, because that's the main, yes, we keep these animals as pets, don't get me wrong, and some people aren't interested in breeding, and that's absolutely fine. But I think for the vast majority of keepers in the hobby, breeding's the ultimate goal for a lot of species. And the more species you can tick off that you've managed to breed, it's kind of, it adds to your portfolio, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And we've all done it, like you said. It's very appealing when you see a 1.2 proven group of whatever species it is. And in your eyes, you're thinking, oh, they're proven, they breed, and that means I'm going to breed them straight away.
Yep.
And actually, you might be buying old breeding stock, which have passed their breeding potential, so you're getting retired animals effectively, or like you've just had the unfortunate realization of you've got animals that haven't maybe had the correct care in that breeding project they were part of with whoever had them before you, and then you have to pick up the pieces, you have to deal with the damaged goods, if that makes sense. So it's all I'd say to people is, look, if you've got time and you want to be patient and you want to enjoy an animal while it grows and better understand its behavior, and there's something really rewarding about getting something really young to the point where you get it to a stage where it produces you young. It's like even better when you've produced something and you get F2, so second generation, because you produce the parent and then the parents produced you those juveniles. And I had that with a Bronia tenuata. I had a litter off some animals I'd gotten and kept all those animals to adulthood. And then I keep, this is something I was going to go on to actually as a separate thing, but I might as well roll into it. I keep a Bronia outside in summer because they can take the cooler nights. They're from, high altitude Mexico, cloud forest. So, the cooler temperatures are really good for them. They're pretty hardy, yet they can take the really nice hot days as well. So, these babies I produced, the first year I had them indoors because you don't really put babies outside. It's too risky. They are so delicate when they're small, and it's better to keep an eye on them. But after the first year, I'm like, they're out. And I'm pretty ruthless with it, if I'm honest, because at the end of the day, if they're strong and they're meant to survive, they will. If they're not, then that's just life. That's nature. Sometimes that doesn't work. And I'd cycled the Bronia and the Tenuata and brought them in for winter. And then the following spring, came in and one of the females had produced me another litter, and it was great because that's the first time I've ever produced F2s.
Wow.
And it was really, really cool, and they were all perfect. They were all really, really good.
How many did you get from that litter?
So that female gave me 11. It's quite a good size for her.
A good size.
Yeah, she wasn't even like a big female. But don't get me wrong, when a Bronia are gravid, they are huge. They're like a barrel.
Yep.
And with a Bronia, they're a tricky one because a lot of people that are new to a Bronia think that they've got gravid females. But what will happen is as they go through the cycling, they'll produce follicles, and those follicles basically ripen and they create quite a lot of body mass to make you think they're gravid. And then for whatever reason, if they've not mated with a male successfully, they'll either reabsorb those follicles and then they'll just go to their normal size again, and you'll think, well, hang on a minute, yesterday you looked like you were going to pop. Today you're normal size again.
So it's like monitors fertilogenesis, is it?
100%. 100%. It's the same thing, exactly. And then if they ovulate, but they haven't had a successful breeding by a male, they'll slug out, and you'll get these sort of yellow waxy blobs, which are basically infertile ova. It's just like having an infertile egg. So they're great, but if you do get lucky and you do manage to breed them, they sort of a successfully bred female that's gravid holds herself slightly different, and when you've been working with them long enough, you do get an eye for it, and you can kind of see which ones are holding them. Like tree monitors, females will hold themselves and
they kind of sag a bit out.
And then they create that like pear shape. A Bronia can do similar things to that. They'll also belly bask, so they'll kind of be under the basking and they'll kind of turn their body. It's really cool what they're doing. They're actually, I've seen this. They're actually moving the embryos inside the abdomen to basically let them all have an exposure to the infrared heat or the heat source you're giving them. So basically, they're these little babies floating in a little sack inside their stomach, and then obviously she can, through contraction and movement, just basically move them and rotate them around, and it's really cool to see it. So it's great. So upstairs I've got a cool room, and I've got a Bronia, in there. I'm actually moving my Abronia to a friend of mine, good friend of mine down in Yeovil, just because my tropical collection's getting bigger now. And with the Abronia, even though they spend 6 months of the year outside, it's bringing them in winter. I normally have them in a room where I've got a window ajar, so I let it get really cold. It can get to like 10, 12 degrees.
Yep.
And that's kind of what they need. And this winter, I was sadly not able to do that because I'd gotten another species of tropical snake called tiger rat snakes. And they don't want those temperatures. So the Abronia I've got upstairs, I've got a breeding pair, so it wasn't a bad idea to give them a break anyway from breeding this year. And then I have got some juveniles that are growing on from them that I had born 2.5 years ago. So this year I kind of thought I'm going to slow down on the Abronia anyway. And then I kind of thought, well, let's face it, I can't do it all. I can't keep, cool temperate species in a room, which I'm trying to cool, whilst having a tropical species like the tiger rats, which I need to eat. And that leads me on to my sort of thought process on collection planning. Because a lot of people, I think, we all see species and we're like, I want it. That animal's amazing. Want that species in my collection. And I think we're all guilty of it. We need to consider whether an animal's going to work within your collection, how you keep stuff. So, for example, if you want, okay, let's go to Europlatus. You say Europlatus, don't you, George? I'm going to say.
I do, yeah.
I'm going to say Europlatus. So they like, quite a cool period in winter for cycling, more so than other tropical species might. So if you're someone that's keeping tropical lowland species and you're like, I really want to get Europlatus now as well, your Europlatus would be fine within your summer temperatures probably when you're keeping them in the same room as your other tropical species.
Yeah.
But then you're going to want to try and drop them slightly in winter just to give them that cycle. It doesn't have to be a lot, but they will require some kind of, drop in temperatures.
Yeah.
And that might not suit the other species you've got.
Yeah.
And for me, what you end up doing is you end up fighting against one of the elements. So let's say you drop the Europlatus, but then you heat all your other stuff. It's very counteractive. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're fighting all the time to try and
You're fighting
worlds, but it doesn't work.
Absolutely. And the chances of you being successful with both is very unlikely. You're probably going to tailor it more to suit one species than another. So all I'd say to people is, and I'm very fortunate that I can do this because I own my own house. Now I've moved out, I've left my parents' nest a long, long time ago. And when I bought my house, I wanted to make sure I had enough space to be able to do my dining room, so for my sort of montane reptiles, a tropical room for the warmer, and then obviously a cool room for the Abronia when I was bringing them in for winter. And and like I said, that's how I kind of planned my collection. And because I've, like most people, ended up finding a new species like the tiger rats and thought, these are amazing, I've wanted to work with these for ages, had an opportunity to get them, I've gotten them, and now I have to go, right, Adam, you can't do all of them now, so let's think about where you'd put the Abronia. And I'm lucky in that I've got a real good network of friends in my hobby. And my good friend down south, as I said, he's a great keeper. He's kept Abronia before, bred Abronia before. And I just called him one day. I said, look, Rob, do you want my Abronia collection on a loan? I've got all the housing, everything. We'll breed them. You'll breed them. We'll split the babies. And I'll make it, fair that he gets to keep some of the babies. And he was really like, mate, that's a great, opportunity for me. Thanks so much. So we both win. And then actually my animals, none of my animals have been compromised on their husbandry to meet the needs of another one. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's easy to say it, and it's very, I understand it's difficult for a lot of people that might only have, say, a room that they've got as their animal room, or I used to keep my animals in my bedroom, before I got, when I used to house share.
Yeah.
And so if you are doing that, all I'd say is, consider is the species you're keeping, working with, actually the best species for that scenario that you're in.
Yeah.
So, and we just call it collection planning, because you're just planning what will work best in your current position.
Yeah, like you, I'm fortunate to have 2 rooms. Well, almost 3 rooms effectively. So like you, I've got a hot and a cold room. So it's a Europlatus room, but there are a few other bits in there. But they all, like you said, they all get on. Like your Boyds with the Fraser eye, they all get on with the same kind of climate.
Exactly.
So like you said, it's planning. We all, like you said, we all do it. We all get stuff we like. You go into a shop or you see something online and you go, I didn't know these were in the hobby, and you get them impulsively. And you kind of do that kid in a shop thing where you go, got the animal, shit, now where do I put it? And it's everyone does it. We've all done it at some point. You just learn as you go through the hobby, don't you?
Absolutely. And you'll probably keep that animal really well and it'll be really happy, but you probably won't breed it if it's an animal that requires, a seasonal fluctuation. And I think a lot of people are scared that their animals are going to get cold. I find a lot of people contact me, or friends or family or whatever, and they've got a pet beardie, and they'll say, "Oh, my bearded dragon's it just sleeps all day during winter." And I'm like, that's what they do in the wild. Oh, when he's got a heat mat, I'm like, turn the heat mat off. What temperature does your house get to? And they'll be like, oh, it always stays above 15. I'm like, perfect. That's what he wants, That's a natural thing. If you're keeping your reptiles warm or the hotter end of their tolerance, you're burning them out quicker. You're actually reducing their life expectancy because their metabolism's working overtime. So, they're just going to end up dying younger, because it's like a car effectively. If your car was sat on your drive for 3 months of the year and didn't do anything, didn't do any mileage on it, versus a car that you drive 50 miles every day for a year, that car you've been driving is going to be a lot worse off than the car that's had a period where it's been sat on a drive and not done anything. Does that make sense?
It's funny because I was going to use a car analogy as well. I was going to say it's like driving at 1,000 revs or 6,000 revs.
But it is. And I think it's a good way for people to understand it, because it's like, I've used that analogy with tortoises when I've tried to explain tortoises and how they work and the way they hibernate. Well, most of them, Mediterranean species, and people say, oh, I've got a horse field. Should I hibernate it or should I just... And I said, well, look, you don't have to, but it is natural for that animal to hibernate. And, it's always best if we can create as near natural environment or situation for an animal as we possibly can without it being detrimental. Obviously you don't want to put an animal through something that, yes, it might go through in the wild, but actually it's going to be really brutal and it's going to be really hard on that animal and may end up killing it. I'm not saying that, but if an animal like a horsefield tortoise has evolved to hibernate and go through a period of inactive mobility, they don't eat for 3 months, then let them do it, but do your research, because if you get the timings wrong, that's when you can have problems.
Absolutely.
So you've really got to do your research on it. And I think now, with things like hibernating animals and cycling animals, we're getting better at it. We're getting a better understanding of how to do it. Yeah. So and I would definitely push people to do it if they can.
Definitely. I mean, this is the first year for me. I put Shinisaurus down, so they're all in brumation now. All of the adults, despite the one with the kinked back, like she's still on the road for recovery.
Yeah, she's recovering, isn't she? Yeah.
But I mean, a mutual friend of ours, Danny, I've probably been pissing him off with messaging about brumation because it's a first for me, and it's they're all down at 12 degrees right now.
Yeah, and it's scary, isn't it?
No, it's terrifying. It's terrifying.
But and that's the thing, George. And then one thing to say, to your listeners, like, if you're unsure of anything, right, and you want to do something but you're not quite sure, and someone else has done it and got experience with it, reach out to them, because most people in the hobby want to help. Okay, they do want to sort of give advice where people need it, And I'm a big advocate for that. Like, I always get people messaging me, and I don't mind it, because actually I was once like that. I was once this person that didn't know, was a bit naive to some things and didn't understand. And I'd rather, people reach out than not, and put their animal through potential suffering because they didn't know what was going to happen, or whether it was the right thing to do. So, and another thing as well, when you're doing your research, just be careful with what you're reading online. There are a lot of proclaimed experts out there.
Oh yeah, you get your keyboard warriors who are smart asses.
100%. And look, we're all learning. I'm by no means an expert. I'm very experienced in a lot of things, but I'm still learning. I'm still, seeing things that I haven't seen before from species I've been keeping a long time. So I'm like, it's all about learning and sharing that knowledge, without being arrogant or a dick about it, basically. We're all trying to do the same thing, and the more people can get on board with best practice and, moving with advancements within the hobby, then that's great, because everyone, including the animals, are going to benefit from that.
Exactly. So Europlatus is it can be a bit gate kept, but I think they're very simple. There's not very many bells and whistles. But going on to the Europlatus, what species have you kept? What have you bred? What have you had the most success with, or the least success with? Let's kind of touch on the species as a whole.
Yeah. So the first species I bred and kept was Europlatus sickeri. Okay. Probably my favourite species, if I'm honest.
Top three for me. Definitely in the top three.
Absolute. When you get a high green lichen, it for me, is just incredible. Camouflage. And I ended up getting a trio from Ham in Germany, and captive bred. And at the time, I was not very experienced with Europlatus, so I've done research. But at the time, again, this is nearly 15 years ago.
Wow. There
wasn't much out there, and I'm a big advocate for naturalistic setups. Really natural. Trying to replicate natural habitat as best as possible. And at the time, a lot of the enclosures I was looking at were really bad. They were very basic. There weren't many live plants. There was a couple of branches. And so it was hard, because these were from people that were breeding and doing well with them. And I was like, I can't bring myself to keep them like that, just for my own personal reasons. So I ended up getting a trio, and keeping them in an Exoterra, sort of 60 wide, 45 deep, 90 tall. And then I wasn't really cycling them or looking to breed them. At the time, I was just keeping them and enjoying them. And then one day I went in one night, and the male was locked with one of the females. And that's the first time I'd seen breeding, so I was super excited. I was like, amazing. And then, it made me think, right, well, you're going to have to look up for eggs soon. And I started digging around, I think like a week later, because I didn't know how long the gestation was. And I found a pair of eggs that were obviously older than the eggs that she was about to lay from the copulation I'd just seen. And it was just, you'll know, mate, when you find a pair of eggs just sat next to each other, and they were in that kind of, they got that like layer of soil on them when the female rolls them, which is an amazing behaviour. And I was just so excited, and was just smiling ear to ear. Took them out, did my research on how to incubate. They don't like being wet directly, so I had them in a little bottle cap on some dry vermiculite, and then obviously had a tub with some damp vermiculite on top. And and then continued to find more eggs, which was great, because I clearly thought, right, now I need to be more on it, and I need to, because when you find eggs, you have no idea when they were laid unless you see her laying. So it's hard to know when they're due. But I don't worry too much about that. I know a lot of people like to know exactly sort of the time they'd be expecting babies. But I tend to just check my incubator daily anyway.
Yeah,
And if
likewise.
there are babies there, they're there, you know. And then the first time I hatched them, and I don't know whether you found this, George, with some of your stuff, but I always found with Sicari, I would always have a male and a female. Now, the female would always hatch first, and the pair I had, the female, the breeder female, was high white. She was one of the white females you get.
Okay, yeah.
Really high white blotching.
Yeah.
And so the baby pretty much was a mini version of mum. And then a week later, the male hatched, and he was obviously classic male. He was quite browny green with the sort of vertical lines down him, which I found was quite a strong male trait from what I produced anyway. Yeah, and it was great, and it was just really cool. And yeah, basically rearing them same as the adults, just in smaller size enclosures.
Yep.
Room temperature mainly for the ambient. You know, you don't. Baby Europats are delicate, as you all know. I think they're one of those species that sounds contradictory what I'm going to say. You know, they're actually bomb-proof if you know what you're doing, but they're super delicate if you overcomplicate it.
I think a lot of people, error is there. It's kind of
definitely not. Yeah, they're not. They're not forgiving. So if you nail it, if you give them what they need, they're really, really easy. But as soon as you overcomplicate it and overthink it, then that's when you find that they just don't tolerate well to those kind of environments and tend to perish. So, but yeah, I did really well. I didn't lose any of the babies, and
amazing, nice.
Yeah, so that was right.
I never got I never really get 1.1 whenever they hatch.
Okay,
it's very random for me. But it's interesting to hear that you always kind of got pairs.
Yeah, with them, it was literally, and there was always about a week between the eggs hatching as well.
That's really interesting. How many clutches was that over? Or was it kind of ballpark? Obviously, you probably.
It was about 8, I'd say. I reckon in total.
Wow, that's quite consistent then.
Yeah, really consistent.
Yeah.
It was, and actually, it was so long ago. I can't remember if I incubated at a constant temperature or if I let them have a night drop. I think I probably let them incubate at a constant, which would have been a 22, 24 mark. Whereas I know a lot of breeders now that breed them by giving them hatch them by giving them a night drop. So basically the heater, the incubator they're in, is timed to go off at night and they get a significant drop. I think the incubation's a lot longer, but you get a really big, strong baby at the end of it.
Yeah, so I don't use an incubator at all for any Europlayers. My winter temps really fluctuate. I don't do anything for it.
Yeah.
I mean, I might let it get down to, I kind of don't really let it get lower than 13 degrees now.
Yeah.
I've got them to 8 degrees, 6 degrees in the past, but they can take it, but you know, within moderation.
Yeah. The thing is, mate, Madagascar, it's like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I've been there, and trust me, some days are red hot and dry, and the night's already muggy and warm, and then you'll have rain, and it's cold, and you can see it. You know, it's freezing, and it's not constant. This is another thing I think people get wrong when they keep and incubate eggs and stuff. And you know, in nature, nothing's perfect. Nothing's always one temperature.
No.
There is fluctuation, and fluctuation's important, not just for allowing the egg, you know, to be exposed to cooler temperatures, but it can affect obviously the sex determination of the hatchling.
Yeah.
And we know that, you know, if you keep it at a constant temperature, and I've done it with Boyd's forest dragons, which I'll go on to in a minute, and I produce loads of females, and I think it's because I was keeping them between 21, 22. I've got a good friend in Australia called James who breeds Boyd, and we got chatting, and he explained how he does it with his, and he allows his to kind of get to the 23, 24, and then
more males, is it?
And then it's like a nice mix. He says he gets about 50-50.
That's good.
So I tried his method and ended up getting, you know, some good results and getting some males. Yeah, so I think people shouldn't be too worried about trying and dabbling in new methods.
No.
It's always handy to have one incubator set to a set temperature and then another one slightly warmer, or vice versa, slightly cooler.
Yeah.
Because then, you know, in the wild, I'd say most species can have like a 3 to 4 degree gradient. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, like you said, some of your Europlatus eggs got to 13, that is really cold, but they will take that. But if that was a prolonged exposure, they probably wouldn't have hatched.
Yeah, so I mean, like it's weird with my Europlatus eggs. I mean, they might get down to 13 on the odd night. The day gets back up to 18, 19 maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, literature will say 90 days to 120 for pretty much all Europlatus across the board. They're all very similar in hatch days. I've had Ebanawi, spear leaf tails, hatch on, it was like day 230.
Crazy.
So I mean, there must have been like a natural diapause.
Yeah,
But the animals, mate, they came out like subadults, so they were fucking huge.
yeah, solid.
They were huge,
Yeah.
and I think if there was ever, I don't care about like, I don't, I put the, with the dry vermiculite like you use, I use perlite, but it's the same thing.
Yeah, yeah,
I put them in the perlite tubs, I set them aside, I let it cycle with the room, and I forget about it. If they hatch, they hatch. If they don't, they don't. And
yeah.
the I think 95%, 99% of the eggs hatch. I mean, I let them do what they want. I mean, at the end of the day, the adults are healthy. They're doing well.
Exactly.
So if I look at them and I go, well, the eggs will do all right then. And that's
Exactly that.
I don't
And I
overthink
think,
it.
yeah, you do need to just trust in A, your method, but B, the animals you're breeding. And
Yeah.
look, if eggs fail, they fail. Like it's really heartbreaking when eggs fail because you don't always get an answer as to why.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to think, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that. And if you're incubating eggs and you're worried about anything and you start to change too much, as in temperature, humidity, position in the incubator can massively influence eggs, then you're changing too many variables to understand what went wrong.
Yeah.
So my advice to people is try and keep it really simple,
Yeah.
because that way, if for whatever reason it does start to go wrong, you can narrow down what has gone wrong rather than go, well, is it the fact I upped the temperature 2 degrees yesterday? Is it because I added a bit more water to the medium? Is it because
Yeah.
I knocked into the incubator when I was hoovering my bedroom? Do you know what I mean?
That's a really good way of looking at it as well, kind of simplifying your keeping.
Mate, less room for error.
Exactly. Exactly. And like you said, you can really pinpoint what went wrong.
Exactly.
Like you said, if too many chefs spoil the stew, really, isn't it? So
Totally.
if you don't know where to start, if something goes wrong, you have no idea.
Yeah. And the thing is, we can't learn from our mistakes if you don't know what it was you did wrong.
Exactly.
And I've done it, like when you try and I think I was trying to breed, it was green tree pythons again the first time. And I got the eggs and I had this way that I wanted to incubate them. And it was ridiculous. Looking back on it, it was a really stupid way to do it. And they ended up failing.
Did they?
And when I saw them failing, I started to panic. So I started to change stuff. And then I started to get advice off people. Mm-hmm. And then someone said, do this, make this change, do it now, and you'll save them. Another one say, no, don't do that, do that. And all of a sudden, I was getting advice from all these people. Most of the people actually probably hadn't bred green trees, but were just telling me this is what I needed to do. And I remember it being like really stressful because I put so much pressure on myself to, these eggs were perfect when I got them. They were the most perfect, pearly white, plump little eggs. And when I started seeing them collapsing and denting and sort of discolouring, it just
heartbreaking.
Panic.
Yeah.
Looking back on it, I should have just remained calm and composed and just gone, Adam, don't ask 10 people what to do because they're all going to tell you something different. And then you're like, well, who do I listen to? Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes you've just got to go with your gut and do what you want. Because at the end of the day, if your eggs don't work, they're your eggs.
Yeah.
Someone can give you advice and they might be giving you really bad advice, but it doesn't matter to them. It's not their eggs. They're just like, oh, well, that's what I would have done if I had the eggs, but they're not theirs. So don't go and do something if you think it's not what you would have done.
Yeah.
Maybe just stick with your gut. And if you are in need of some assistance and a bit of advice, then try and seek someone out that has been successful and that will give you good advice. And maybe just stick to one person rather than, like I did, 10 people.
I did the exact same with the Shinisaurus babies. It was a debate of do I keep them in a naturalistic but run the risk of potential water infection and fungal infection, or do I keep them somewhat sterile, simpler, drier?
Yeah.
But is that really going to be the best for the animal? Tried out all of them and then just asked Danny, and he said just do it naturalistic. Just stay on top of cleaning for that kind of first month, 2 month period.
Yeah.
And then, stupidly, I went on Facebook and asked other people's opinions just to see what everyone else said. And then I had 5 different setups, keeping 10 babies all different ways. It was a fucking nightmare. And
Yeah.
then I only just reverted back to Danny's opinion anyway. So it's
Exactly. And again, George, it's stressful because you want to do what's right by the animal.
yeah,
And it's tough when someone's giving you advice. Like Danny, obviously, he's tried and tested. He's had so much success doing like that.
mm-hmm.
But also, I know people that do keep them semi-clinical as well, in
Yeah.
semi-sterile, which again is good because you can monitor them better. You can, you'll see them more, so you can gauge if anything's wrong. So there's definitely pros and cons to both, and I'll lead that on to green trees again if I can, just because I'm a big supporter and bias of keeping green trees naturally, like in their enclosure, keeping them in a rainforest.
Yeah.
There's a lot of keepers that don't, and that's absolutely fine. That's entirely up to them. They'll keep them in a 2 foot by 2 foot squared plastic viv with maybe 2 perches and a water.
Yeah.
Look, if that's how they want to keep them, I'm not going to judge. That's the snake's probably happy. It's probably does everything it needs to do, and they probably have success breeding it. But for me, maybe it's because of my career and what I do,
Yes.
zoo world as well. But I like to give my animals the option to live as wild and natural environment as they possibly can.
Absolutely.
And there's something to take away from that. If you give your animal choice and control of its environment, it will be happier. If you limit your animal to only a certain few places it can sit, or don't give it much enrichment, then for me, it's not being fulfilled in its sort of natural behaviours it could exhibit if it had the choice to. So you'll often get people say things like, "Oh, corn snakes, they're terrestrial." Yeah, by terrestrial, they live on the ground. They don't. That's absolute rubbish. Corn snakes are highly arboreal, and they will climb if given the chance.
Yes.
I'm not saying everyone with corn snakes needs to give their snakes a 6 foot tall enclosure, but if you were to, they would use it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's because you're giving them the choice to do that. If you keep them in a 2 foot high enclosure, then of course they're not going to climb because you're not giving them the choice to climb. And I think we were discussing before, weren't we, about does size matter?
Yes.
In inverted commas.
Tanks, guys. We're on about enclosures.
Yeah. And, look, I think the more space you can give your animal, the better. Yeah. Within reason, let's face it, I could give my boydie this entire dining room, right? They would utilise it. If I gave them the right perching, the right sort of conditions, yeah, they would move around and they would use it. But that doesn't mean that's what they need. I keep my animals in what I'd like to think is suitable sized enclosures. Yep. There's always room for improvement. Mm-hmm. You could always keep things in bigger, nicer setups, but that would massively limit how many things you could keep. So without being a stamp collection and having just stacks of it stacked on top of each other, or rack systems, because I can't sit here and say they're good systems to use, but people do, because obviously it allows them to keep more in a smaller space.
Yep.
But if you give your animals the option to, have a good size enclosure, if you theme it correctly with the right perching, right branching, planting, everything like that, basking places, you'll see a happier animal. You'll see behaviours, you'll see interactions with their environment, and that is really, really rewarding. If you keep it in a box with one perch or one bit of furnishings, you're not going to see much, are you?
No, you won't get the best out of the animal. If anything, it'll pull off the species.
Yeah, because you'll think, oh, it's rubbish, it's boring, it doesn't do anything. Yeah. Well, it doesn't do anything because you're not allowing it to do anything.
Yeah.
I'll just quickly, should I quickly just pan?
Yeah, we can pan around your room if you're happy to do
I'm wondering can I turn the camera? I don't know whether I can on this.
I'm not entirely. I've never used this platform with a phone.
Okay, so what I might do is I might just unplug and then turn it around.
Yeah, cool.
So there we have my Anodus fraseri. There's a trio in the Exoterra of 1990, and there's a pair that I produced in the other Exo.
Just quickly, Adam, is there a option on your phone for a better quality camera? It's just, I don't know if it's just because you flipped it round, but it's just gone a bit fuzzy.
Okay, let me.
If not, it will get by.
Don't think so. Is that any better if I go closer?
It's about the same, but we can make out what we're looking at.
So this is one of my breeding Boyd's enclosures. It's a Viperia. They're all Viperia down here.
So for those who don't know, Viperia is a PVC tank, quite commonly used in in the UK. Good build quality, keeps in humidity, just like your standard PVCs. But I think you use quite a lot of them, don't you, Adam?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I use a lot of Viperia. Just quickly, I don't know whether you can see that. That's a female.
She is like mid-lay, isn't she?
Yeah, she's laying, and then
crazy.
There's a pretty impressive animal.
They're very cool. They're very, very cool. And you've got how many? 3 adult pairs or trios?
Yeah, so I've got 3 pairs, and then I've produced quite a few this year, which have all sold.
You've had how many was it roughly? Because I think when I came round, there was a good amount.
Yeah, 15, I think.
15. Wow.
Which actually I've had better seasons. I lost some eggs.
Did you? Okay.
In the incubator, which happens, when you have numbers like that, you always sort of expect to lose a few, but
nonetheless, 15 is a very good season for.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Things,
and for genetics as well, that's with 3 unrelated pairs. So I've got some really good lineage that to offer unrelated animals is always the better option if we can.
Absolutely, yeah.
Don't get me wrong. You can crossbreed siblings. I know a lot of people think inbreeding's really bad.
Yeah.
It is for some things, okay? For example, mammals and birds do not do well when they're inbred. That's just, common knowledge. You crossbreed siblings, you start seeing deformities and, disabilities very quickly.
Yeah.
Whereas with reptiles, it's completely different to mammal and bird genetics. I'm not a geneticist. I think that's how you say it. I'm not going to sit here and tell you the science behind it, but from my understanding, if you've got good genetics in your animals and you breed them, then in theory, the offspring will share those good genetics. If and when you start to see any form of mutation, change, underbite, overbite, anything like that, then it's probably a good idea to not breed from those animals just in case it is a genetic thing.
Yeah, well, you're just building upon small issues,
Exactly.
It carries on.
Exactly that. And you've got to think there's a lot of reptiles in the world where their population is literally in a forest the size of a football pitch.
Yep.
They are inbreeding. Trust me, they have to because, they don't have a choice. And then clearly, for whatever species that is it works for, there's no risks. Look at a Komodo dragon, for example. Parthenogenesis is very commonly documented in Komodos, and females will produce viable eggs from not mating.
Yep.
And all those eggs hatch as male. And the reason for that is because she would eventually then breed with one of her sons to then recolonize an island. Let's say if she was the only dragon on the island.
Yep.
And that is a way a reptile has evolved to recolonize. And she can start a whole new generation from herself.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but parthenogenesis, the reason for that is, what is it? They're mainly island species, aren't they? Where
mainly
islands have drifted apart and they've evolved to parthenogenesis or something like that.
Absolutely, but you do look. Parthenogenesis is actually more common than we think. Anacondas have done it. Oh, okay. Even royals have done it before. There's lots of species that we're just starting to learn and understand that can achieve it.
Yeah.
I've got a species of lizard upstairs, relatively new to the collection, called the yellow spotted night lizard. They're a really cool species from Central South America.
Oh yeah, I know which ones you mean.
They're called Lebidophyla flavomaculatum. It's a bit of a mouthful, but they're all female. There are apparently very small populations of males, but they're one of those species that in captivity, they're just all female. And
Okay.
I've bred them in the past, and they're literally just daughters. They're clones of the mother. And that's just really cool because, well, not cool if you want to think about, there's no act of reproduction. So whether that makes it quite a boring existence for a lizard like that, but clearly it works. There you go. Great,
Okay, I'm
yeah.
just getting this up for those who don't know. So that's what we're working with, is it, Adam?
Yeah. So, yeah, really, really nice species. There's a few now actually available in the UK. Some have come in. They're not the most active lizards. They tend to just sit under a rotten log.
Okay.
They are semi-nocturnal, so or crepuscular.
They're similar to red croc skinks,
Similar, yeah, exactly. They've got a bit more attitude than a crocodile skink.
do they?
Their bite is horrific. It's a really, really nasty bite. And they death roll as well. So when you get hammered and it death rolls, it can take pieces off you. So,
Really?
but for anyone that wants something that's a bit quirky, a bit different, you can basically do a really nice setup with, forest floor style setup with a load of leaf litter, some roots, ferns and stuff. And yeah, you can create quite a nice habitat for them. Without taking up too much space. So yeah, they're really cool, and like I said, they're parthenogenic. So if you keep your animal properly and well fed, and sort of cycled to an extent, you will one day just go in and they're live bearers. So you'll go in one day and there'll be like between 5 and 10 mini versions of mum, just sort of dotted all over the place. So yeah, they're really cool, really, really, really interesting.
So you've kept and bred for Sikore. Well, I say Sikore or Sikori or however.
Sick, yeah, sick, yeah.
And then you've worked with. Correct me if I'm wrong. You've worked with the Henkelai, the
Well,
Fantasticus,
yeah,
and
Fimbriatus.
Fimbriatus.
Yeah, so Fimbriatus are for me, if you like the bigger species, like you keep Gigantus, they are really, really nice. But I do favour the Fimbriatus just personally because the red eye they've got a red eye with the yellow iris, and they're chunky as well. They're not quite as big as Gigantus, but they're a big gecko. And I kept quite a lot in the past.
Yep.
Never bred them. They're actually one of the hardest species to breed. If you get them right, they then continue, and you do pretty well with them. But I think initially getting them going can be quite tricky. And at the time I was keeping them, there was just something I clearly wasn't doing right. And just, we never got eggs, unfortunately. So,
Yeah, the larger species tend to like it quite a bit warmer, which is
yeah,
why I've now put the Giganticus downstairs because they're not
yeah.
going to do anything in the room with Fants and.
Do you know, I think that's where I went wrong because at the time I was keeping them down here actually.
Really? Okay.
In the dining room. This is before I had the Boyds down here. And I wonder whether it just did get too cold in winter.
Yeah, so that's the thing with the more of like the Fimbriatus group. So you've got the Fimbriatus, Giganticus, and then you've also got there's other species like Semeti, Sikore are actually part of Fimbriatus as well, but they're all warmer
Henkelai as
species.
well.
Henkelai is not, no.
Is it not?
Sorry, it is. Henkelai is. Henkelai is. But then you've also got like the Lineatus. So they're
Yeah.
all very warmer species. So my Lineatus, my older pair, it took me 14 months to get them going. And in that kind of first 13 months, I had them in the same room as my Fantasticus, Sikore, even the Ebonara were in that room, but they were always on the top of the rack, so it was a bit warmer. Anyway, I went, they're not breeding, they're not doing anything. I'm trying all these tricks. I moved them into the same room as my tree monitor and monitor, kind of like baby room at the time when I was breeding monitors. Within, I shit you not, 3 days, they were locked up.
Yeah.
I think
Just that trigger, wasn't it?
it was the trigger, the extra humidity and extra food.
Yeah.
I went, I'm gonna put them in this room, same tank. I just picked up the tank and moved it. Increase of about 5-6 degree ambient, and put a load of food in there. Sprayed probably a little bit more, but in that just to raise the humidity a bit. 3 days they were locked, and then they went every month for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the plan with the lions and the giants going downstairs. It's going to be
Yeah.
same trigger.
Yeah. And and that's because you gave them at the time, I'm winning unknowingly, but you gave them like a really good cooling.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they were wild caught that pair, so maybe
Yeah.
there was something to do with the acclimation or
Yeah.
whatever. But yeah, the cooling probably did do a favor for them.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And just to note when cycling stuff, a lot of people feel they need to cycle their animals to what their natural home range is doing.
Yeah,
And I've never really understood that unless it's the same as here in the UK. Because if you're trying to heat something in our winter, because in their home range it's hot, like in Australia, but then cool them in their winter, which is our summer, it's really
yeah,
counterproductive,
yeah,
and you're fighting a losing battle. So what I'd say to people is, regardless to where they're from and what their wild habitat environment's doing, use our climate to your advantage.
yeah,
You'll find, for example, we had a lot of snow a couple of weeks ago,
yeah.
and lots of things in my collection were, well, the frogs were calling more for sure, and that's without me cycling them, so I haven't put them in a rain chamber or anything.
Okay.
And the monkey frogs were just calling, and that's because the air pressure, the biometric pressure, had dropped because of the
Yeah, yeah,
low pressure we had from the snowstorm. And I saw my anoles locked more than I would have done
yeah,
had there not have been a storm. So, you know, that's great because I hadn't done anything. I hadn't changed anything.
yeah,
The outside had done it all for me. And like I said, with my Abronia, I'd keep them outside in our summer and bring them in for winter. And I can't remember the name of the company that did it. There was a company, a Viv company, that produced these biopods, I think they're called.
okay,
They're glass terrariums, and they're one of these smart glass terrariums that basically had a program that you could type in any region on the planet. So, for example, let's say you had red-eyed tree frogs. You could type in through an app the exact location you wanted to monitor weather patterns for. So Costa Rica, and then you'd find the GPS for exactly where you wanted to. And then basically what this system did is it picked up on everything happening at that time in that place, and
yeah,
would then do things like, let's say there was a lot of cloud cover, it would dim the lights down so that it looked like there was cloud cover. Clever, don't get me
yeah.
wrong,
Very
it's
clever.
smart,
Yeah,
it's smart stuff. It would have an irrigation system, so if there was high rainfall, it would trigger the rain system to come on. And in principle, it sounds good. It sounds really clever, really smart, but actually, it's really stupid as well, because your frogs sat in your reptile room in the UK on a hot summer's day
yeah,
are going to go, but it's not raining. But because, say, it is in the wild where it's picking up this weather
yeah,
data, it then turns it all on in trying to replicate what's happening. And it's kind of like, but it doesn't, those frogs aren't there, so they can't fit. There's other things going on which we can't see, we can't
yes,
understand. So, as great as it seemed when it first came out, I think it did kind of flop a bit. I don't think many people bought onto it. And I just think, again, it's kind of overcomplicating what you need to do.
yep, yeah,
It's trying to be too smart too quickly. And just, yeah, like I said, let's work with what we've got happening here.
mm-hmm.
So, for example, if we have in summer, when we have high pressure and we have, a storm,
Yeah,
I sometimes will go around and turn all the Mist Kings on in my house just to give my animals, because outside, sometimes we can feel the pressure change, can't we? We sometimes get migraines and stuff, and the animals are definitely picking up on it. And like I said, for the giant waxy monkey frogs, that's how I'm hoping I'm going to manage to breed them, is if I time it well with
a storm,
a good storm, get them out in I've got some work to do in the greenhouse before they go out there. But yeah, I've got loads of plants in there. They need the right type of plants to lay their eggs on because when they spawn, the female releases the eggs. The male's obviously in her plexus on her back. He fertilizes them, and then the female will fold a leaf around the eggs, basically, and cocoon them. And if they don't have the right kind of plant to do that, they just won't do it. So I'm hoping to get a few species that I think could work for that, and again, give them more options. And then hopefully, if I've got 4 or 5 species of tree I think might work, at least they can go, yeah, that tree will work for us, and they'll go. So so that's the theory behind that. But yeah, it's all about, let's use our common sense. Let's use our climatic conditions to help keep our animals and cycle them for breeding, because that's the only way it's really going to work.
Yeah, absolutely. So going on, how we keep animals and variables we can change, the better the care and the natural behaviors we see. We'll touch on the diets and the gut loading that you kind of use to I mean, you have a lot of success with the majority of your animals, and it's not just because of the temperatures and stuff. A lot of it goes into the diet.
Absolutely.
So if you want to take the reins a bit on that.
Yeah, definitely. So diet is something that's advanced quite a lot, I think, over the last few years. I remember when I was first keeping reptiles and getting live food, I used to just keep crickets in a little Hagen with some egg crate, and I think I used to maybe feed them, if I remembered, and then I'd feed, and I probably forgot a lot of times to feed them, which was awful because, at the end of the day, live food is a living thing.
Yes.
Ultimately, we've got it as a food source, but that animal does still need, care. We have a duty to care for that animal. And by caring for that animal and giving it the best we can, you're then giving the best to the animal that's going to eat it.
Yeah.
So the best way I can describe it, if you neglect your live food, you're neglecting your animals.
Yeah.
Because you're not giving them the best you can. And so let's start with...
just quickly, it's a very interesting way to kind of frame your mindset around thinking about live food, because a lot of people, and admittedly to myself to some regard, I mean, you don't look at that animal as almost as an animal. You look at it as a food source, and you
absolutely
kind of forget about that. But really,
100%.
Your animals are what you put in them. Just like we are. So
exactly. If someone said to you, you can have, I don't know, something that's just been run over and hit by a car, food-wise, a deer, or you can have a organic reared, prime steak from the best supermarket, Waitrose, let's say, for argument's sake, what would you rather? You definitely want the higher quality, better kept animal, the one that's going to be more beneficial to you as a food source.
Yeah.
You're just going to choose that for sure. So if you're the person that's in control over the quality of the live food your animals are getting, you should be giving it the best care and quality you can, because that's what your animal would choose if it had the choice. Yeah. Don't get me wrong, they're not subconsciously going, I wish I had, a prime instead of this crappy meal where he's just thrown in for me.
But no, you're right. It's
they don't know any different, but that's not their fault, because they haven't evolved to know that. They just need to understand that what you're giving them is of good quality, and it's your duty to ensure you're giving them good quality. So if we start with live food diversity, so look, I'm going to use, let's use Europlatus as an example. So Europlatus fimbriatus in the wild, if you were to go into their habitat on a night time with a torch, you would see hundreds of species of invertebrates.
Yeah.
Cicadas, katydids, spiders, moths, stick insects, millipedes, centipedes, the list goes on.
Yep.
So in the wild, they've got thousands of species on their diet list. So they've got a lot of variety, is what I'm saying. Whereas in captivity, the variety we can offer our animals is very limiting. We've probably got, I'm plucking a number out of the air here, maybe 20 species of realistic live food available for our animals. Okay, but for me, and this is the best way I can kind of explain it to how I would understand it, is the thing you're feeding your animal is actually just a case. It's a
Yes.
parcel. It's what's
Yes.
inside that parcel is what's important.
Hmm.
But equally, the exoskeleton, the external part of that food source, is also important. So that's why if you can use as many different species as you can, you're giving that animal variety
Absolutely.
as it would do in the wild. But also, if you're gut loading your live food with a good balanced diet with variety, that is only adding to the variety of the animal that's eating that feeder. So what I'm saying is you could have three groups of brown crickets. Okay, so it's the same species of cricket, but you could have one group you're feeding on fresh green and veg, fresh greens and veg and fruits. Okay, you could have another group that you're feeding a commercial dry powder mix
Yep.
that's readily available from various different suppliers, and your third group you're feeding nothing, right? So even though they're all the same species, they're all the same insects, nutritionally they're three different things.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like you having a sandwich. One sandwich is filled with BLT, the other one's filled with egg and cress. I mean, who eats egg and cress sandwiches? And then the other one's filled with cheese. You know,
Yeah.
they're all sandwiches, but what's in them makes them different and gives you different nutrition.
Absolutely.
So what I'd say to people is try and give variety in the feeder you're giving. But if you favour a certain species because it just works for you, okay, I use a lot of dubia cockroach
Got you.
because they're just great. They're a really good sized feeder. They're not quick. They can't climb the walls. If they get out, they're not super invasive. They're not,
No.
they don't plague or anything. They're dead easy to gut load. They eat anything I put in for them. So I
Yeah.
would say my animals, that's their staple.
They're really good
I
source of
also
protein as well. I think
really good
if you
source,
look at
but
the
don't get me wrong,
nutritional.
they're quite high in fat as well. So you've got to be careful with how much they're getting. But
Yeah,
I'll go on.
I heard something about males carry they don't process oh, fuck. It's something to do with when I used to keep tree monitors. It was always don't feed adult males, and it was because they can't process a molecule properly.
Okay, but I would question that, George. Again, that's probably information that I don't know
It's a
whether
bit
there's any.
ropey.
It's a bit. I wouldn't say yeah, they might not be able to metabolize a specific uh, protein or calcium or
Yeah,
something,
yeah,
but they've still got their place, and yeah, that might not be scientifically backed up. That might
sure,
just
yeah,
be heard it and they're now saying it. So um, yeah, you've got to take things like that with a pinch of salt,
yeah,
really. But you're right in the sense, feed in moderation. I also breed woodlice as well. Very good feeders, high in
okay,
calcium. They're clean up crews, so if the animals don't eat them, they're part of the bioactive if
yeah, of
that's what
course,
you're doing, which is really good. And then supplementation. So as long as you're feeding your feeder animals, so your live food, a good balanced diet, that in turn is giving your animal that's eating them a good balanced diet. And you can supplement with calcium. Dare I say it, things like Nutribol. Personally, I don't touch Nutribol. It's designed for every taxa of animal. If
yeah.
you look on the thing, it's got a bird, a
A
rabbit,
rabbit,
a cat,
yeah,
snake, and a tortoise. I'm sorry, if if they're producing that it's suitable for all those animals. Trust me, it's not suitable for your reptile. It just isn't.
You know what? Touching on that before we go back onto the gut loading, I spoke to somebody who swore by Nutribol for reptiles,
Yeah,
and anyway, I bought some for I can't remember the species. I bought some. It was a calcium mix, but it was high in calcium and high in
D3.
D3. Anyway, the first time I bought the big tub, I was like, oh, I'm going to use it long term, so I'll buy the
Mm.
£25 tub or whatever it may be.
Yeah,
Um, the first time I used it, I gave it to some baby Europlatus Sicerae and Fantasticus. I didn't use it on all of them. I kind of went, new product. I'm just going to try it on
yeah, which is really good. Yeah,
two animals. I'm going to see how they get on. and I don't feed or supplement Europlatus babies until about 2 or 3 months. Just I want to just gut load well and get some food in them and not fuck around with too many supplements.
Yeah.
3 month babies, Nutribol calcium with D3, both died the next night.
Yeah.
And I just went, right,
Effectively, you poison them effectively.
yeah. I just went,
Because
definitely overdone something.
something like Nutribol, so from my understanding, it's got properties which are beneficial to the animal, but if it's overdosed in it, if in the sense of the animal doesn't need it and you still give it to it, it then can't get rid of it.
Yeah.
So that animal then stores it in its body,
Yeah.
and it goes somewhere to like the joints or the bones, and it basically can have really long-term negative impact on the animal.
Sure.
Whereas if you go with something like, I don't know, Arcadia Earth Pro A, okay, I use that a lot. Earth Pro A is a lot of natural elements, a lot of clay in it, there's calcium, there's other things. With Earth Pro A, you can use it with every feed and the animal will take from it what it needs. And if it doesn't need certain elements of that vitamin or mineral, it just excretes it. The body gets rid of it.
Yeah.
So you can't actually overdose on it. I would still use it sparingly. It's one of those things where I think it's probably not needed every feed, but you're not going to kill your animal by giving it to it. Whereas things like Nutribol, as you've just said, you can actually poison your animal by giving it too much. And the same goes for calcium. You've got to be really careful with calcium. And to be honest, with the way that we've advanced in our lighting and heating, and you know, if people are understanding to gut load their food better, calcium should come already in the food they're getting. You can give it to gravid females that you know are going to be producing eggs or babies, and they're going to, you know, if they don't have calcium available to them, they'll sap it from their bones and often the jaw, which is why you get the underbite. And actually, we'll just move on to Europlatus with that, because obviously a big thing for Europlatus breeders, especially the females, is snails.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of breeders don't offer snails because they probably are getting calcium from something else. But in the wild, it's been documented that most Europlatus females during the breeding season, they time the breeding season with an abundance of food, as a lot of reptiles do.
Yep.
There'll be a trigger in their home range, which is something that benefits them whilst in that process. And snails, and actually I think snails for a lot of things. I feed snails to my obviously my caiman lizards. I breed snails for them, but since I've had snails that I've been breeding, I've offered them to other things, and the boys go absolutely mad for them.
I bet they do.
And what I do, they're good snails. They're about that size, and I crush the shell just to help, but I keep the shell on. And I'll tongue feed it, and they come straight over, and they'll grab it, and they'll crush it up. They'll eat the shell. Sometimes, you know, a bit of the shell fall out, and you know they don't bother with it. But more often than not, and I know that that's my animal getting natural calcium, because I bet in the wild, in the wet season when most reptiles breed, there would be an abundance of snails available to them.
Absolutely. And it's,
so
like you said, it's a much more natural way of doing it.
Yeah.
And like,
by that, you know, if you're using feeder snails, just feed your feeder snail, I don't know, something high in calcium, so spinach, kale. You can even give a bit of cuttlefish bone to tap land snails and stuff, and they will feed off the calcium on that, and that in turn is giving your animal natural calcium, because the feeder in the snail you're giving it to it is obviously passing it on. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's supplementation is important, but it's got to be done properly, and I would advise that, don't be too anal about it, too regimented. It doesn't matter if you miss it, 1 feed, 2 feeds. Oh well, you know, it's not gonna kill your animal by doing that. Whereas if you give too much of something, like, dare I say it, like Nutribol, that can have really bad consequences, to the point where I'd say don't even bother supplementing. Just make sure you're giving, you know, healthy gut-loaded live food.
Yeah, I mean, with calcium of the Europlatus, I probably supplement it. It's not when I remember. It's not that I don't remember. It's just more.
Yeah.
It's more okay. I fed calcium. I feed probably 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah.
At the minute, it's twice a week, just because it's a bit cooler.
A bit cooler, yeah.
But let's say breeding season, if I feed 3 times a week, I may supplement calcium once, but
Yeah,
maybe once every 10 days or something like that. But
yeah,
really, like you said with snails, I give everyone snails at the beginning of the season. And with Europlates, there's no hiding it. They have massive calcium sacs. They
exactly.
tell you when they need it.
Mate, I was just
Um,
going to say that. Read your animal. Your animal will tell you if it does need it.
yeah, and if their calcium sacs are out here, they're good for the season. What's the point
Yeah.
giving it then?
Oh, yeah.
What's the point?
100%.
And the males
And
don't need loads of it.
no, no. And actually, that moves on to another point. With feeding, because in the wild, a lot of our reptiles and frogs and stuff, they'll be eating little and often.
Yeah,
And a lot of the stuff they eat actually probably isn't very nutritional. They're just eating lots of it. So lots of flies, gnats, things like that. And where we're feeding, good quality live food, crickets, mealworms, roaches, whatever it is, we're feeding those animals really good food. So the food our animals are actually getting is really good, should be really good
yes,
quality,
yeah,
which means, in my understanding, they need less of it. Yeah, because they're getting a lot of good nutrition with every feed.
yeah, yeah.
So even though in the wild a lot of these species would be eating every day, because they're opportunistic, they eat as and when it's available. If you were to do that to your captive animal, you would quickly have a very obese animal. And if it's a species you're aiming to breed, I can guarantee you won't breed it.
Not a chance.
Because
yeah,
its organs will be covered in fat store,
yeah,
and you're just not going to be able to breed it because it's just not going to be in the condition to be able to breed. So it doesn't hurt to starve your animals a bit. There's a lot of people tell me, oh, I feed, snakes, for example, like I feed my snake every Wednesday.
yeah,
It never misses a feed. I'm like, yeah, but in the wild, it doesn't eat every Wednesday.
yeah, exactly.
You know what? Look, animals are creatures of habit. Even something like a snake that isn't necessarily intelligent, they're more instinctive. Feeding an animal like that every week, it will get bored. It will, because you're not enriching it, you're not changing anything. And once you've got a routine like that, animals will quickly, follow a routine.
Absolutely.
And I don't agree with it with the stuff we keep, because in the wild, they don't have a routine. So I genuinely don't have a time I'd feed my green tree pythons. I just feed as and when I remember. And that's because I'm like, I'll sometimes feed them every 3 weeks.
Yeah,
Don't get me wrong. Most nights they're sat there caudal luring with their tail, telling me they want to eat, because that's what they do in the wild to attract food to them. But that doesn't mean I go, oh, you're caudal luring, you're hungry, I must feed you, because they'll do that every night, and I'll very quickly
yeah,
get obese snakes.
Yeah,
And then, like I said, I won't breed them because they'll be fat. And especially males. I mean, God, in the breeding season, my male green tree, he eats probably half of what I feed the female a year, easily, because he's just not interested. Once they've got their fat stores and they're in good condition, they can fast for a long time.
months.
Months, absolutely. One thing for so you can cycle things to breed, and that's actually very popular with green tree pythons and emerald tree boas. So when you want to breed those females and put them through the breeding cycle and get them to ovulate, well, not ovulate, get them to produce follicles to begin with, you just up their feed. And I tend to give, with my green trees, they tend to eat large mice and gerbils. That's the kind of main diet I give. I don't give them rats. For me, lab rats are just fat. They're just no good to them. When it comes to feeding vertebrate prey to stuff, I try and stick with the leaner species. So mice are quite high in fat, but nowhere near as much as a wiener rat would be, for example. Gerbils, very lean, really good feeder for any snake or any carnivore, any monitor. Multi-mammoths, so you've got multi-mammoth mice, pretty expensive, but again, they're a very wild type mouse species. They're actually a naturally occurring African species of mouse that has kind of become domesticated, but they're still very wild-like, if that makes sense. They're not like the common pet rat, lab rat, whatever you want to call it, or lab mice. They're still very much as they would be in nature.
Okay.
And hamsters, and people go, oh, how can you do that? I'm like, but a hamster is no different to a rat or a mouse. Just because you used to have a pet hamster doesn't
Yeah.
mean that you can't feed an ethically euthanized hamster as a feeder, because ultimately that's better for your animal. So they're the kind of things. And so when I want to brood my green tree, I'll give her a couple of big Syrian hamsters.
Okay.
Not in one go. I mean, maybe in a month. But
Yeah.
it's like that. That's a chunk.
Size.
Mate, when she eats it, you can see it's huge. But that normally triggers her into her reproductive cycle. Just that big intake of really good quality protein.
Yes.
And that's kind of how I managed to cycle them for breeding with the food.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, like you said, a lot of them respond to there's a trigger, isn't there? Whether it's temperature,
Yeah.
humidity,
Yeah.
or food. I think most of the time it's probably a small combination of everything, but
Definitely.
it's arguable which one's best. I don't think there's a best, but I mean, there's
No.
food probably does it the most of the time.
Yeah.
But then the photo period and heat and all that does
Yeah.
play a big part.
100%. And it's probably a case of if you missed one of them out, they would probably still go.
Yeah.
And I would say that one of them is probably more important than another, in my opinion. So, yeah, I think diet's probably the main one.
I'd agree.
But very close behind would be photo period and, a cooler temperature they can get at night time.
Yes. Yeah. I think night drops play a huge part in everything, not just things like we're talking about with the Boydie and Europlayus, but I think most things really benefit.
Definitely,
if not every animal.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything in the wild is exposed to cooler temperatures at night. That's just science. The sun goes down, the temperature gets cooler. Often the humidity will rise, and that happens. But
yes.
It worries me. You get a lot of people that keep stuff under the exact. They've got a thermostat set to 30 degrees, and it just stays like that the whole time.
Yeah.
And it's like, look, your animal's not going to die necessarily because of that, but it's probably, if you ever try to sleep at night when it's too hot, it's horrible.
Yeah. It's
like
looking at
it's dangerous because our bodies need to drop in temperature in order for us to go into REM, which is obviously a good state of sleep. But I do fear for the animals that people keep that don't understand that and keep them hot all the time.
Yeah.
And just how uncomfortable that must make them, because they're cold-blooded, they think, they need to be warm all the time, don't they? And they think, if I let it get cold, that's being cruel because it's a cold-blooded animal anyway, so it needs to be warm. And I think a lot of the time they'll put their own feelings and emotions into it.
Yeah.
They'll think,
oh, we're back. Did you get a phone call?
yeah, sorry, I did.
Yeah. Not a problem. What were we saying?
So I was just saying that I worry for the animals that people don't allow to have a bit of a break from the heat, especially in summer. Like when our houses, most British homes are well insulated. So when we have a heat wave, and it's been a hot day, most people's homes are at an ambient temperature most things would want at night anyway.
Yes.
Yeah. If your house is sitting at 20, 25 degrees at night because we've had a heat wave, trust me, your Viv is a lot warmer than that because it's retained heat from the lighting. Let that animal have a bit of, respite from that heat because it can be really, really dangerous if it doesn't.
Yeah, and you'll see it as well, and they'll tell you. If anything, they'll become more lethargic, won't they?
Well, they'll either become more lethargic or they'll pace a lot. They'll glass run because what they're trying to do, their brain is telling them, you need to move because your body's too warm. And obviously to thermoregulate, a reptile has to move from where it is.
Yes.
If the ambient of where it's sat is, we can sweat, dogs can pant to cool down. Reptiles can't do that. So they have to physically move from where they are. And if they don't, they're literally stuck in that, sort of window of I need to cool down, but I physically can't go anywhere. And if your animals are glass running constantly, that can often be the reason, because they're too warm and they want to get away from whatever's keeping them too warm.
Exactly, which does go back to what we were saying earlier about collection planning and all these
Yeah.
things, and especially because this is a Europlayers podcast. I mean, if you're planning on keeping, if you might have a bearded dragon and a whatever else, a few monitors, and you think, yeah, but Giganticus or whatever might be a good one because it can be a bit warmer. Again, you do need the drop still, even though they do like it warm, and they can take up to like 30 degree. In a warm spot, it does have to get cold, and it's the same with anything, like you're saying. It needs to be able to get away from it, and it's like that old analogy, isn't it? So you don't care if they give you 1,000 degrees or 0 degrees, just give them enough space or enough gradient.
They'll find it.
They'll find it. They'll tell you. And like your
Yeah.
tanks, it cut out a little bit earlier, but if you look at your tanks, for example, you themed it as such where they can pick any certain spot they want, and
Yeah.
there's ample opportunity for them, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly, and that's that's the nice thing, is you can just let them do what they want to do, pick and choose. Whether it be thermal gradient, humidity, even to an extent UV gradient. A lot of people don't understand the use of UV, and I'll quickly touch on this because I think it's really important. So when you buy UV bulbs, you'll often have a 14%, which we know is like for desert species.
Yes.
If you want, bearded dragons, chuckwallers, uromastics, things that would be getting high intense UV. And then tropical species, it's relatively low UV because of the nature of where they live. UV isn't actually that abundant. So like for Uroplatus, they're all forest species. They're all found. So they're what we call a conformer. They'll conform to their environment rather than physically thermoregulate like a beardy does. Beardy goes out in the sun, sits in open sun, gets really high UV, really high temperatures, gets to its optimum temperature, which its body needs to be to function, and then it can do its daily routine. That can be look for food, fend off rivals into its territory, go and hide because it's too hot and it needs to cool down. Do you know what I mean? It's like you're charging your phone. If you don't let your phone get full charged and you unplug it and it dies again because it's got no battery, you have to keep it plugged in. And that's kind of like an animal thermoregulating. They're charging when they're in the sun, when they're basking, but they don't want to be in that state all the time because
100%.
they're vulnerable and they actually have got stuff to do before they. But then when you go onto the Uroplatus, same for the Boidy, they're thermoconformers, and they'll pick gradients within the canopy of the forest which suit their ideal optimum body temperature that they want to be. So they'll kind of shimmy up and down the branches that they rest on during the day. And in the forest, obviously, as the sun's moving, you'll get shards of light that come through. So there'll be these little windows of like direct light, but they'll be only there for a couple of minutes before a shadow forms where the sun's gone, there's a leaf in the way or whatever. So, for example, Boidy have been seen, especially females, basking in these little windows of light, but it's not common that they do it. And they will be getting a good hit of UV from doing that and, warmer temperature. But generally speaking, they'll just move up and down the branches to allow their body to just basically be the same temperature as the forest.
Got you.
So when we're getting UV and allowing our animals to have UV, if you're getting a rainforest species, you'll get 6% UV, which is at the lower end because they're designed for forest species.
Yeah.
If you put a 6% UV T5 above your Viv, let's say it's an Axioterra for a chameleon, or a Uroplatus, let's say, you're then going to theme that enclosure to the habitat that animal's found in. So dense rainforest, you're going to put some branches, some birch and some nice trees, a little ficus tree, whatever, some ferns. And before you know it, you've actually blocked out all the UV because you've given the right environment. But actually, by doing that, you've gotten rid of, that UV's got to pass from the bulb through the mesh of the lid of the Exoterra, through all the foliage that's coming across and creating layers. And actually, when your Uroplatus has found its preferred spot, might not be getting anything. Now, there is argument as to whether they physically need it.
Yep.
And that's for a lot of species as well, actually, where that UV is essential for their welfare.
Yep.
In my opinion, if they get it in the wild, let's best try give it to them in captivity. But also remember that sometimes by trying to give what we think is right can be wrong, and you can end up creating problems. So with Europlatus, there's a big one with the eyes getting fluid build up behind the lens. And apparently that's too high exposure to UV, and it creates, like a blister on the eye. Have you ever seen it, George? It's quite nasty.
It's quite, it's nasty, isn't it? I've never seen it in my own collection, but I've seen photos of.
Yeah, so I've seen it too, and but I don't think it's been proven that it's UV, but I think it could just be, you've got to remember their eyeball's like a lens, isn't it? Like a magnifying glass, and I don't know if they're resting in a spot and they're not moving from that spot because in the daytime they're kind of at rest, they're sleeping effectively. Maybe light's refracted through the lens and magnified it, and then it's ended up burning the cornea or the pupil or something. So maybe it isn't UV, maybe it's just the light that's used, whether it's too high end LED, the lux level's too high or something. I just don't know. But what I'm trying to say is, most people don't have UV readers, do they, in the private hobby? And I think they should. They're expensive. I've got one. I got it for Christmas a few years ago. They're about 250 quid. Yep. And what they do, they're really good. They basically tell you, there's a little lens on top of I should have brought mine down so we could talk about it. And you can basically you can put that UV reader wherever your animal can get to and press this little button and it will tell you what level of UV is physically there, and it gives you an idea of what your animal could be exposed to. Because there's a thing where people say, you need to replace your bulbs every year. That's absolutely rubbish. I've got Arcadia.
It's a marketing strategy.
Of course it is.
That's all that is.
Because most people don't have a UV reader.
Yeah, exactly.
So they'll literally put in their diary, right, I need to replace Spike's bulb on the 10th of May because that's when I bought it last year. You don't. I've got T5s, honestly, that are still kicking out good UV, and I've had them 5 years, and I'm not replacing them because they're still working.
Yeah. I mean, I checked. I've got a solar meter as well, and I checked all of my other stuff, and it's like I've had the bulbs for over 2 years, and they're still fine.
Exactly.
And to be honest, if anything, if it's getting a little bit low, I just put another branch in so they can get closer.
Mate, there's that. It's not exactly. It's not a bad thing. It's so. And so what I'm saying is, like, don't feel because you've got a rainforest species, you need to put a really low UV over the top. Because, in fact, what you're going to only do is create more cover, which actually means the animal's getting nothing. Yeah. So I say to people, look, if you've got a burn-in 12%, let's say it's a little bit older, but it's still kicking out a bit of UV, probably use that. And as long as you theme the enclosure correctly and put enough cover, the animal will pick and choose what it wants.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I always used to use 2.4s on my Europlatus, just because there's always that argument, isn't there? Like you said,
yeah, of course.
Do they need it?
Yeah,
and it's like I'd rather give it than not give it. But now I've gone up to 6. I've gone to 6%.
Yeah,
and they can just pick
100%. And have you seen any ill effects from using 6%?
Oh, nothing.
They shed perfect, don't they?
Oh god, it's all off in one night. There's no stuck shed. They pick, and I mean, they might hide under a leaf, but guess what? They're getting 0 UV.
Yeah,
and
but do you know what?
They might be on a branch.
That happens in the wild as well.
Yeah.
They'll have days where they literally get nothing, and then there'll be a bit of a clearing. I don't know. Let's say Europlatus is settled on a tree, and then a lemur jumps across and snaps the branch. Mm-hmm. That then lets loads of light in. That Europlatus is then sat there in direct sun, getting. And trust me, the sun in Madagascar is hot, and the UV is intense when you're in direct. And if that animal sits there and goes, "Okay, I'm getting too warm now," it will just shimmy down the branch just to get away from it, and then it will just settle, and then it will. And that's what I mean. That's how the thermoconform. They'll just they'll pick and choose what they want, basically.
Yeah, I mean, they're not. I don't think animals. They're not as stupid as people make out.
No, not at all.
They know what they're doing. We're just following what we think's right.
Exactly that, mate. They're instinctive. You've got to remember, they're not trained or taught to do any of this. They're born, and it's innate, and they just know what to do, which is great. And that's why when you give your animals a naturalistic environment, the best way I can describe doing an enclosure, right? This is how I like to tell people. This is how I do mine. If you can imagine your vivarium, your rectangle or square box, whether it be glass, wood, perspex, foamex, whatever. Imagine that square structure is a laser, and it's gone out to country of origin where the species is you're wanting to keep, and it's just gone down through the habitat, and it's taken a cross-cutting cut from that environment and then brought it back into your reptile room. That's kind of what you want to achieve when you're creating. It's a bit of a corny way of saying it, but I think it's, if it helps people understand, okay, yeah, I can do that. That's you know, a viv's a blank bit of paper, you know, and you can design it how you want. And
100%.
I find it really fun. I think it's like art. Yeah. It's like art, isn't it? It's living art.
100%.
And especially when you use plants that thrive and do really well. I've gone crazy with tropical plants. I mean, my vivs are absolute. I'm constantly cutting them back. Behind me, I don't know whether you can see, but I've got all these ferns.
Wow.
I've got some like anthuriums and stuff, and I've got all these plants just so I can chop and change my vivs. People will say, well, you know, is it not dangerous to move one plant from one enclosure to another for biosecurity reasons? Yeah, you know, you can be careful with that. I wouldn't necessarily say taking a plant out of one species and sticking it in with another is the best idea. For that reason, I've done it in the past because I've had to, and I've taken the risk, and I've never seen any problems with it. Probably because, touch wood, at the time I didn't have any diseases or problems with my animals. But if it is something you're worried about, you can always take the plant out, leave it as a house plant for a couple of months, and then stick it in if you want to put it in another enclosure. And you know, like, just to touch on what we did the other day, George, when I said about getting the ficus tree for your helmetids, you know. And, you know, what I tend to do is, if I've got an animal that I'm like, oh, it's looking a bit dehydrated, you know, I've got plenty of house plants, I'll just, you know, get said lizard, let's say it's a Boyd's forest dragon, I'll put the palm that I've got in the shower, and I'll put her on the palm, and I'll just literally leave the shower running on her and just let her hydrate naturally, rather than me standing and absolutely saturate the enclosure. So, plants, you know, in the enclosure are really important, and you know, you can utilise house plants as well if you need to give you help with certain situations.
Yeah, definitely. It's a good one to think about, and that shower trick was awesome.
Mate, the video you sent me, they're drinking, aren't they? They're just drinking away, and it's super cool because it's like, you know, that's how they would do it in the wild. They're just sitting on a tree and just literally, as the rain comes down, they'll just obviously start lapping it up. And, you know, yes, we all rely on misting systems, and some people, you know, just rely on manually spraying. I used to, and that's a lot of pressure when you've got to manually spray everything, because, you know, you've got to make sure everything's having a drink when you go and do it. And like I said, when you stick them in the shower, if your shower's safe to do so, obviously I'm not saying everyone go and do it, and then they say, oh, it jumped out the window. Well, make sure your window's shut. Because, you know, they're animals, stuff happens. They can, you know, like you found out, they can jump on the curtain rail, can't they? And and stuff. But yeah, it's a good method to use, and I just thought I'd throw that in there.
Oh, it works wonders, and it's almost sad now, because every time I spray, I do hand spray a lot still now. I do have misting systems for everything, but I enjoy it. It's for me. It's a good way of interacting with them, and definitely. I get my daily or bi-daily checkup on them. So But anyway, now it's not sad, but it's like seeing them in the shower drinking compared to when I spray. It's like, but they were much more content in that shower.
100%. And actually, that leads on to another thing, because drainage is something that's really overlooked when it comes to an enclosure. And don't get me wrong, I've had vivs that have just pissed water everywhere because I've not sealed them properly. Exoterras, you can't really put drainage on them, and I mean, by drainage I mean a tap to let extra water out. You can do it, but it's tricky. So when I had the Boyd's vivs built by Viperia, I've got them on a base, and basically at the bottom I've got hydroleca, which is a drainage layer. I've got a plug hole, then I've got a membrane, and then I've got the soil on top, and I've got a Mist King with not Mist King nozzles on these. These are actually just they're really cheap irrigation nozzles, so they're not a mist.
Yeah.
When it comes on, it actually rains.
Oh,
And the
okay.
great thing is, I can rain on these for as well. The reservoir needs topping up, but I could leave it on for half an hour if I wanted to, and all that excess water will just run down through the soil,
Yeah.
out the plug.
The open tap and drain out.
Yeah, and then
Yeah,
I've got
yeah.
a bucket underneath, and I just change the bucket, and I just chuck the bucket of water out, and since having that system, I've found my animals to be just a lot happy for it. Humidity's better, their sheds are better. I often see them drinking off the branches and leaves when it's raining, which is obviously natural. I still do manually hand spray them as well, but moving forward, when I come to do more enclosures, that's how I want all my enclosures to be. So if I need to, I could just absolutely drench them and
Yes.
be rest assured that I'm not going to flood the enclosure and it's going to leak out everywhere, that I can contain it to a bucket or a reservoir or something, and then I can get rid of it that way. I think it's definitely been a really good system to use.
Yeah, it's again, it's going back to that planning and keeping everything simple as simple as possible, but a little bit
Yeah,
of a little bit of planning
yeah,
prior.
yeah,
It's going to make your life so much easier, and
definitely, and make
it's
your
going to
animals' life happier as well.
exactly. It's going to say the animals will benefit, you'll benefit, and everything won't feel as much of a task. I mean,
Yeah,
everyone's busy. Everything's expensive these days, so you probably have to work more. And the last thing you want to do is finish your 50, 60 hour week and come back and go, oh, fuck, I've got chores to do for the animals because I've oversprayed and it's now bogged down and I need to rip
yeah,
it all out and
yeah,
change this. It's a headache. So,
exactly. It
you know,
is. It is. It really is.
so just make it a bit easier. But I mean,
Yeah.
I need to get on the draining system for a few of my species.
Mhm.
Um, Exoterra do now have those frog terrariums, so all of my new exos have
Yeah.
the pipes on it.
Okay, that's good.
So I've not tested it out yet, but I know it does apparently work.
Good. Well, I mean, that's and that's good that Exeter have foreseen that as probably a problem that people are having.
Yeah, yeah.
Why it's limited to a frog tank, I don't know, because technically everything should have it.
I think
But
their new range is every size.
oh, great. Okay,
Yeah, yeah. So the new 90, 45, 90s all have the plugs and everything.
perfect.
So
That's really good. Yeah.
we're coming up close now to 2 hours, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So if we want to just kind of start rounding everything up, we'll touch upon, we'll go on new additions and kind of what you're going to be going into in the next. Not necessarily where do you see yourself in X amount of years, but what
No. Yeah.
what new additions are there, if any, and then where do you want to be? Like, what do you want to achieve? We're straight, it's a new year, it's 2026. What do you want to achieve this year, or be prepared for 27? Because I know you've got a few younger animals like your caimans and whatever
Yeah.
else.
Exactly. So currently, I think this year is going to be another good year for the Boydie and the Anolis fraseri.
Yep.
Um, you know, I think I've got their sort of breeding down to a good standard, and pretty much due a lot of eggs this year from those two species. Really want to breed the tiger rat snakes. I did get a female drop me an infertile clutch. That's not a bad thing.
No.
Obviously I would have preferred a viable clutch, but that's good to know that she obviously has gone through the process she needed to. I just think the male that's with her needs, a bit of cycling. So I've been keeping him a little bit cooler. So I'm hoping to breed them. I've obviously got these green tree eggs, which will be hopefully hatching out some little yellow shoelaces in the next month or so. They'll be keeping me
Brilliant.
busy.
Yeah.
I'll probably hold some back, but I will be, letting a few go once they're feeding. So let's see how they go. Growing on the caimans, I'm going to have to think. So the long term project for them is a container in the garden. So shipping containers are a great use of space, and you can basically turn them into anything you want. And I've seen them be used for animal rooms, and they're not that expensive. They're, once they're, you've got to plumb them in, you've got to make sure they're well insulated. So they do range in price, but for what I would want, I've kind of budgeted quite a lot, because I want to make sure that it's going to do everything I need it to do without me worrying about it. And basically, the animals that will be going in there will be in there like all year. It's not like they only go in there for part of the year, because the caiman lizards are a big lizard. I can't have an indoor enclosure for them and an outdoor enclosure. So the goal is to have a container and then have either side of the container inside to have 2 big patio doors that has a walk-in enclosure. That'll be for caiman lizards. I would like Boleyn's pythons as well, because that's a species I love and would have wanted for a long time, but they're very expensive and hard to get. But I've got a few leads, so I'm hoping that through my breeding successes, that will hopefully potentially fund that kind of project. And again, they would have a walk-in enclosure with access to outside, because species like that need, as we've all been talking about, cooler nights and sort of trigger breeding. And a lot of people don't breed them, I think, because they don't allow them to have those triggers. So there's a few things I want to play around with that. But that's probably 2027, I should think. I don't think that's going to be this year. But I've got time on my hands, and well, to my advantage, because the baby caiman lizards are still growing. So I've got them in a nice big enclosure for now anyway, so I'm not under too much pressure. Lophosaurus dilophus, so New Guinea forest dragons, are a species I used to keep. They're very similar to Boyd's. I used to keep the yellows, the more commonly kept species. However, I've got a good friend in America called Justin. He's working with a really good group at the minute. His animals are flawless, and we've been chatting, and he's said when he's got captive breds available that he'd send them to me. So that's a species, and they're very similar to the Boyd in respects to what they need. They need it a little bit warmer, but they're pretty much identical. They are awesome dragons. Like, they are really, really cool, really lovely species. And that's pretty much it, I think. But then I say that and something else comes up.
Most people don't finish up and round up on that's about it on Boleyn's pythons, caiman lizards.
No, I can understand. And if you had asked me myself 15 years ago, 20 years ago, Adam, do you think you'll be keeping and breeding species like Boleyn's or caiman lizards? Oh, sorry, I want to throw in there Parsons chameleons as well.
Amazing.
Again, incredible species. Basically, mate, I would love a Madagascar room. For me, because of the requirements of them needing to be getting a good cooling during winter, I would love to have a room which I can just dedicate to Malagasy species. So I'd love Parsons, a pair of Parsons. I would love golden mantella. I'd love a few species of Europatus, Sanzinia, so the Madagascan tree boas.
Yeah.
Again, I think I need to get a bigger place with more land so I can have multiple containers. That would be the dream. But there's loads of other cool forest lizards I want as well. There's Enuloides, which are iguanids. They're not agamids. They're from Central South America, and they're an awesome species. I know you've looked into them as well. And again, Justin, my friend in the States, he's doing amazing work with that species. So there's something that really interests me as well. So
stunning. Stunning.
They're great. They're really, really cool. So there's a few things definitely left to tick off, I'd say. But sometimes, like going back to the collection planning, there have been times where I've gone, right, Adam, if you want a new species, you need to exit a species to make room for it. And and you'll be the same. You have to be ruthless, and you do have to look at your collection and go, right, what is disposable, because I can't physically do it all. And a species that becomes available, you'll be like, I need it. What do I need to do to make that a reality? So we do need to look, but in all honesty, my species as is, there's nothing I would move on. I just will make it work. So it's taken a long time, and it's always when I think I'm done and I'm like, right, and then something else comes up and I'm like, this is, or I end up having a really good breeding season which gives me the funds for a project I didn't think I could physically afford. And then I'm like, amazing, I've done really well, I can actually afford that now. I'm in a position where that's a reality, whereas 5-10 years ago that was a dream to do. But
Yes.
you know,
Yeah.
so it's quite nice. It's one of those. It's I keep telling my girlfriend, look, there's worse things I could be addicted to.
That's what mine says to me. Said, well, at least it's not crack. I was like, yeah, well.
Exactly.
It's probably more
So
expensive than crack, but
yeah, and you know, it pays for itself. It is self-sufficient, isn't it? There's not many
yes.
hobbies people can do where they say it pays for itself.
God no.
You know, someone who, I don't know, goes to their football team. They have a season ticket. God knows how much they cost. But you don't. You gain from going to that, but then it becomes a memory, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
Whereas with our hobby, you invest and you go, right, this pair of Europlatters are going to cost me 600 quid, whatever it is. But if I do well with them, I can make that money back in the first year and then make, and it's not, don't get me wrong, it's not about the money. Well, it is for some people, maybe. It's not for me. It just helps. The money aspect just pays for my animals. It pays for the electricity. It pays for the plants and the enclosure upgrades that I do. So I like to say my wealth is in my hobby. And I can see it. It's not.
Yes.
I've got it here, and it's just something I love and something I'll do. Until I die, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's when it's like it's a passion, isn't it? So it never
Yeah.
feels like work. It never feels
No.
like anything.
No, and if it becomes a chore and it becomes, to the point where you resent it because, or you start feeling your husbandry slipping because you can't be bothered, I think you do need to question whether not to say jack it all in, but maybe if you're not committed, then maybe move some stuff on. Don't just have it and let it suffer and you gain nothing from it. Absolutely. Because someone else might actually get a lot of satisfaction. You might be able to get something back from it if you were to sell it. So we all look, life throws cards at us and sometimes those cards are hard and people, you do see people in the hobby have to give things up because of circumstances, and it's sad because more often than not they're pushed to do that. It's not actually a choice. But with that, I'd say it won't stop you if your passion's still there, continuing later on down the line.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Well, I mean, I think this has been a wicked episode for
Great, thanks, mate.
I think there's a lot to take from this, whether it's lighting, tanks, gut loading, just being a bit more clever with the way you approach buying animals or your collection. I think there's a lot to take away from this. And even though we didn't speak loads about Europlaters, it's all very transferable knowledge.
Absolutely.
There's nothing that we spoke about today that you couldn't apply with Europlaters. So I think it's been a wicked episode, mate. Thank you, Adam, for coming on.
No, you're welcome. No
Hopefully,
problem.
all the listeners take from this. I'm sure they will.
Yeah.
I'm sure they will.
Yeah. And if people want to follow me, I'm Adamsdragons on Instagram. So they can.
Adamsdragons. Sorry, I should have linked you there, shouldn't I?
Yeah, don't worry. Just quickly plug my
why not? It will all be in the description and with links. So if anyone wants to go check out Adam's stuff, there's a lot of it and it's pretty cool. So yeah, definitely go have a look at his description. Well, his Instagram in the description. Thank you once again, Adam. As always, it's always good chatting to you. And thank you for listening, guys. We'll see you in the next one. The next guest we have a few people booked in, but I don't want to give anything away. The next episode will be myself and Jack, kind of having our monthly check-in. It's been a while. So stick around, guys. Thank you for watching and see you on the next one.